Hello, my name is Ian Henderson and welcome to another episode of Clickynet TV. Today's expert interview topic is something that we've all looked for at one stage online, and that's how to find a good solicitor in your local area. We're delighted that you're here and pleased to have with us Margaret Campbell of Campbell & Co Solicitors in Cork. Margaret, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you, Ian.
Now Margaret, you've been part of the highly regarded Margaret Campbell & Co Solicitors for many years now. We've brought you on here today to answer a question that we've had from several viewers, and that is, with so many solicitors out there, how does someone go about finding the right one for them? What advice can you give to our viewers about how to find a good solicitor?
Well, it's a very difficult question, because when you're asking me how to advise somebody to find a solicitor online, you're going to find that the description of every solicitor is the same. Every solicitor will recite that they're specialists in every area, and by virtue of the fact that we are qualified through the Law Society, we are all expected to be experts in every area. But in reality, solicitors veer towards certain areas. There would be 4 or 5 separate areas that we work on. Would be conveyancing, which in relation to private and commercial dwellings. There'd be crime, which would range from a very minor crime on the street, a drunken disorderly, to murder. There'd be family, that would range from a very easy family separation to the most complex of family difficulties, where there would be businesses to be divided up in houses, young children, children with special needs, which create huge difficulty, and ensuring that the family can stay as united as and as good as they possibly can throughout, or for the future, that the parents will look to continue to be co-parenting. So if in that situation, you'd need somebody very, very specialised in family and who can see beyond the aggression. So that's, I think, is a very, very important area. If it is family law that your problem is in, it's very, very important in family law, especially where there are children, that you find a solicitor who either a friend of yours has recognised or has used, or you recognise a name, and because of it being in Cork, you'd recognise names in Cork, because Cork is a city where everybody knows everybody. So of all the people I was in school with, very few of us would have left Cork, and we'd be still around. So you'd recognise a name, you'd ring that person and say, look, I have a family problem, and I'd say, well, I don't do that, but I do family. But if people do or don't do family, and if you find somebody who does family, you want to get the type of separation that is suitable for you. You don't want to be bombarded into doing something that the solicitor wants rather than you want. So it's very important that you ensure that what the solicitor's advice to you is going to lead you to what you want as a solution, not what the solicitor sees as the only solution. And the other area then is probate, which can be highly contentious. You really do need somebody in those specific areas, like family, probate, some conveyances where you have very old titles in a city that would be impossible to deal with yourself, that you might need to go and get legal opinion from a barrister to help you. So you would want to be very careful. There are names that would jump out at you from the web page or from the newspaper or from any type of ads, that you'd recognise as being established in a particular area. Then I would telephone you telephone, make an appointment, and you do not expect to get your advice over the phone. A lot of people try to say, look, I'm looking for a bit of advice, and no solicitor can give or should give advice over the phone, except to say that our prices, it's usually in relation to costs, that everybody is very conscious of costs. Everybody thinks solicitors overcharge, but it would be like getting your tonsils out that you go. You wouldn't be going to the cheapest fellow who takes out tonsils, or if you had serious cancer, you'd want to go to the best specialist available, and you wouldn't be asking them on the phone before you made an appointment how much they're going to cost. You want to get an idea of how you'll get on with the person, how the solicitor will deal with what you have got to say. And now the Law Society, through the government, solicitors are now required as soon as possible after taking instructions to give somebody an idea of what the service is going to cost. Sometimes it's impossible to do this because, say, in relation to a family matter, it depends if they're children, there are issues of maintenance, there are issues of access, there's non-discovery, and people not being honest in relation to their assets so that a proper division of assets can happen. So, but as you go along, you're supposed to give the client as near as possible an indication of what the fees are going to be. The most or the easiest area that you can give a price on it is conveyance, because but again, I would never give a price on a conveyance, and I've lost business because of it, because people say, well, I can get it for €900 including VAT and including all outlay, and I just say there's absolutely no way I can do it for that kind of money, because I won't do it. I'll put it under the desk, and if you're not being paid properly for the work and the expertise that it takes, then it's better not to take the work on, because you'll have absolutely no interest in it. So that's very important, that the cheapest is not often the best. It's like, what is it, you pay peanuts, you get monkeys, that kind of a thing. Now, it's not to say that the person isn't capable of the work. It often is that they're young people starting out trying to get work in. I'm not saying anything now derogatory about colleagues, but if you go below a price that is just not viable for a solicitor, then the client, you think it's great, I'm getting it for $750. Well, that might not work out. And as I say, I could not see how it is possible to do a conveyance for that kind of money. No, but that's like some people will do it, and some people's overheads aren't so high as another solicitor. That all has to be taken into account. I'd also look to make an appointment, find out what a consultation is going to cost. It'll vary if it's in relation to a probate. The consultation will be consumed. If the executor comes in or a beneficiary, you'd often do those types of consultations. If it's for a straightforward will, you charge some people charge per hour, some people charge per job. So it depends. Again, I couldn't say what a price somebody would give in relation to a first consultation, but that would be made very clear. If you ask a question like that on the phone, the receptionist is going to tell you we charge $250 an hour, $350 an hour, or we charge $150 for the first consultation. It's left wide open, but you're entitled to be told. The most important thing is I would suggest that you'd ask then, look, I hear that Margaret, talking about myself, she does crime. And then my receptionist would say, no, she doesn't. We don't do crime here, but we'd list out 3 or 4 colleagues who we would consider very, very good at crime. And then you'd give the phone number, and you would make a call to the colleague if you wanted to. Say, look, I'm referring Ian Henderson up to you for messing up or doing something, or hitting somebody in a disco, or we just don't do that. You get good at certain things as you go along, and then some people love the district court and love the fight element. To me, it's a young person's court. That if you've done debating in school, some people just love it. And I work here on the river, not on the river, but my office is right next to the river, and I see them going down to the court, like bringing suitcases of crime files, and I just haven't done it. But again, then to make sure that you don't go to somebody like me for a crime case. You don't go to somebody like X for a family case when they're all the time down in the district court, that you know they're famous or very well known criminal lawyer. You don't go to them with a family matter. So you'd look to your friends to see who they went to and how they got on. You'd maybe have the consultation with the solicitor, see how you're welcomed in the office, see whether you can bond or create a connection with the solicitor, that you like the way they work, that you like the pristine condition of the offices, which mine isn't. But I make people welcome. I treat my practice as a kind of a consumer friendly or client friendly, and people. I don't think people are disappointed. Maybe they don't always instruct me, but they never are threatened by me, which is a big problem. I think that you can find solicitors, or in any profession, you go to a doctor and that they're a bit OTT with the difference between you and them, and that they think they're far more important. I don't know, it's just, you have to be very, like, to find out will you get on with the person. Then I would, again, now say you've done that, you've done that, you see Mary X, and that she's specially qualified in 5 or 6 areas. Then you go down and you see John Murphy, and he's qualified in the same areas. And if you read down through much of them, or go through, say, on this type of online advertising, it gives you a starting point to get a couple of names. But I would think also it's very important that you don't get hundreds of names, and you add yourself. You're adult enough now if it's a family matter or a probate matter, or even a conveyance, because you want to get your deal in, you want to get your offer accepted, you want to get it moving. You have to have a solicitor. So if you spend too long looking around town to save 50 euros here and there, you're going to lose the sale. If you get stressed out too much by adding hours and hours of going through computers or for the names of solicitors in your town, you're going to add to your stress, and by the time you get in to see the solicitor over your separation, you'll be a basket case, because you'll have a list that there would be 5 or 6 issues that I'd like to see. I would mention that that's plenty, and I would say kind of do 4 maybe, and like, you're not going to find perfection in any area, so you just see what it is. Ask a few people then around, did you ever use Margaret Campbell for crime? And they said no, but I did use her for probate, or I did. She does family, she does conveyancing, she does like commercial stuff. You might know somebody in the office, so that's really what I'd be looking for.
That's great advice, Margaret, and it really makes a lot of sense. Thank you for that. Now, I know you've been in business for many years and you've seen a lot of solicitors come and go, and a lot of that has to do with the experience that you create for your customers. Could you tell me a little bit about the experience that you and your team create for your clients, please?
Yeah, well, we're a small practice. We've been through many different types of work over the 19 years in practice here in George Ski, and it's a lovely area. It's on the river. It's kind of it's becoming back into Cork as it's being revitalised, which is lovely. There's a mixture, so there's that experience that you're coming along. You tell the people that you're between the off licence, and the vegetarian or the Indian restaurant, and immediately even that's, you know, it's not a big fancy office. It's a lovely office. People, everybody who works here has been recommended to me through friends. I've never had a stranger who wasn't one of my son's friends, or one of my daughter worked here for many years. My son Neil is my son, and he's helping out here now at the moment. My co-solicitor is the daughter of friends of mine and the niece of friends of mine. So I've kept it all very like a little cottage industry is what we have here. So that when you come in, you're always welcomed, first of all, by Emily at reception. There's never anything like, you know, take a seat for a moment. They're up in court. If you have an appointment, you have an appointment. Because of my specialty in probate, I'm rarely out of the office unless I'll always know beforehand if I'm going to be out of the office. I'm not running out. So your appointment will be honoured. And my own area of specialism is probate, and Sinead then does family and the conveyancing. As we are now, we did an awful lot of work with the redress board, which was to do when the boys and girls were in industrial schools. That took an awful lot of work. I travelled an awful lot to America with that. So I was very conscious of dealing with people who had left Ireland many, many years ago under terrible circumstances. So I had to be very kind of understanding and sensitive to the clients, which I no matter what problem you come in with, whether it is a conveyance, family, or probate, and even with crime, we've done crime if it's in the circuit court, that you have to be very careful that you treat people, that you don't judge. That's very, very important. And if somebody comes into you with a problem with the probate, which is is becoming a very contentious area, in that there are disputes over wills and disputes over rights to inherit, that they're becoming more common, and they cause terrible rifts in families. So you have to try and put a lid on that as quickly as you can, and rather than kind of dissipating the assets like that, you see that there's an empty pot, or a huge pot of money, so you can work away. It doesn't matter how many times you go into court. You have a duty. You cannot waste clients' money, so you have to be very careful that you're giving a service, and you're not just looking at the money side of it, that there's loads of money to pay me, so you can keep fighting it. The things with probate is that, as I say, it deals with people's assets within this jurisdiction, and that you have to take out what's called a grant of probate, and that allows you then deal with the assets of the deceased person. And the contentious side, which would be when there are arguments about an estate, the fees in that can get out of control very quickly, because you have the fees for the estate plus the fees for the person bringing the action. The judges now are kind of moving from allowing all the fees to come out of the estate, that if applications are vexatious, they're nipping them in the bud, which is, I think, is a very good thing. And just to tell you that about a number of years ago, that I was asked by a client if I would help to examine a case in Savannah in Georgia, where there was a family. There were 4 in the family. None of them married. One had special needs, and the last one died, and they found that she had a lot of money in Savannah, and that she also had at one time family had owned a huge number of buildings in Savannah, and there was an ad in the paper looking for relatives of the family. This family approached me and said that they thought that they related to her. So for about 2 years we were working. That was the most interesting case that I had. I've had a couple of very interesting cases. One that went to the Supreme Court, that where there was a mistake in a will, but the will was perfectly understandable. Even with the mistake, a will can only be changed if the judge thinks that by reading it. That's a very complicated area. So in that case, if there's anything at all to do with probate, I'd be very, very slow to advise anybody to not to make sure that they got a very good solicitor to deal with it. That and family would be the two areas. Commercial law, I wouldn't have any. The big firms deal with that. You know, they'd have departments, they'd have tax departments, and they'd have big conveyancing, they'd have banking departments, they'd have real estate. We don't have that. We're just a small group working as best we can on everything. But we're a nice group and we have a nice clientele. And I like family law because I'm a mother myself, and I'm divorced, and my ex-husband and I did it. You know, we never lost sight, thankfully, of the fact that we were still parents, which I think is the most important. And to diffuse the anger is very, very difficult. You suggest mediation, and there isn't a hope. Some people, there isn't a hope of getting anything done by discussion, and in those cases I think it's very important to get into court as quickly as you can and try, rather than going back and forth, and if you get into court as quickly as you can, you often then can settle when you know, like in the steps of the courthouse. But you have to be very careful then when you're settling a case that the money is there. You know, if you're in a family matter, you have to be very careful that, well, you know, I'll give her the house and I'll buy something else. It's not happening like that anymore. People don't have money. People don't have money now to separate that they had when the boom was here. You know, two people on ordinary salaries cannot run two houses when you're using the same electricity, a mortgage, feeding kids in both houses. So it is very difficult. There's a huge change in, you know, if somebody comes in to you and they want to separate, and you just go through the figures with them, and you have to just tell them that there's no way you can afford to separate because you can't live. You know, so you have to be very, very sensitive in how you pass over knowledge to people when you're dealing, no matter what they're doing. And people who come into you could have done 1,000 conveyances, you know it backwards. And you know that all the different forms you need and all the different clearances, and you have to check the planning, and you have to check that the house, get an engineer to have a look at the house. You must remember that this is the first time probably that this couple or this man or woman has purchased a house. So you just can't go you know, if you I'm very conscious of that you have to explain to people what it is you're doing, what the job is going to entail, and that you'll give them the price, as close to price as you can. You can tell a person with the conveyance that look, it's going to be X amount, but when I get the title is the basis for which the house has ownership. And once you get that from the other side, you might have given a quotation, and now you see you need a barrister, that there's something wrong with the title that you pick up. You have to send that to a barrister. That's going to cost a couple of hundred for them to give an opinion. You might find something in this that the lease had only 60 years to run. That's no good to somebody, and they have to buy out the freehold. So that's why you can't just say at the beginning, look, I'll do it for X amount, because it just mightn't happen that it's possible to do that. So we just try and keep the experience for people when they come in as easy as possible. Treat them with respect and sincerity, obviously respect and sincerity, and to always remember that just because you're good at, or you think you're good at some area, these people are coming to you for advice, and they've never had experience. They don't know what you're talking about, especially in probate. Then they don't know what you're talking about. The different types of grants, the different types of title, how to establish title, how to pay the capital acquisitions tax, all that, and just to be very mindful that you're dealing with somebody also who's grieving, whose husband may have died, or child, or parent, or partner. So you have to be, I'd often, like the first time somebody comes in, I'd often just have a cup of tea for them, and you don't do anything to do with the work. You just make another arrangement for them to come in next week, because they have to deal with funeral accounts and costs of, like, very sad things that you'd be rattling off yourself, and you'd it's a very sad thing. So that's the main thing. I think that's why we have a good name in those areas, because we have I think we exude kind of friendliness as well as expertise, I hope.
That's outstanding advice, Margaret. Really, really good stuff, and thank you for that. Now, I know before we brought you on here today, you generously had something that you wanted to offer the viewers of this segment. Can you tell me a little bit about what that is, please?
Well, I think that the most effective or the most appropriate offer I can do is that I will offer advice on an existing will that you have, if you want to need to check it for you to see whether that everything is in order, that it was properly executed. If there is a change that you'd like to make, that I will do that for you. I would advise anybody in relation to wills that if a child gets married, a spouse dies, anything at all that changes, you sell the house, you buy another house, you get a lump sum, and you want to change. Now, I don't advise changing a will too often, because I'll eventually get so sick of it. Now, you can change a will all you like, but if you do it too often, it suggests to me that you're not of the sound mind. You're not of the sound mind to make a will, because you should be able to identify what you want to do, and you can't say people do it. People change wills because they want to frighten people. They're use them as a threat. So I think if I explain, I will do that. I'll have a look at a will for you, and I'll see that it's properly executed. I will see that your current wishes are as the will that you have made 20 years ago, but your wife might have died, or your children might have grown up and gone away, and one might be much more wealthy than another, and it might be time to change the will. And anyone who tells me that it was through this video that they see me, I will do that for nothing. I will also, anybody who comes to me because they've seen this, I will do a will for them, for no cost, but it must be through this. Now, if it is an extremely complicated will with massive trusts, and it won't include tax advice, which is another specific area, but I would recommend a solicitor, or I will do that for a price. The things we talk about in taxes would be trusts, where I have no problem doing a will, drawing up a will for somebody, or advising on an existing will. I think that's very fair, and it's a genuine offer.
That is a very generous offer, Margaret, and I just want to thank you for that. So for everyone watching, you can find Margaret's contact details at the end of this segment. Now, Margaret, I know you're very busy, but I just want to thank you for coming on and having this segment with us today, and we'll hopefully see you again soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, and for everyone watching, thanks for joining us, and talk to you again soon. Goodbye.